Hey everyone, welcome back to another tier list video. In this video, we're going to be going over patch 11.8 in season 11. So we're just going to do what we do in every other tier list video. We're going to be going over all the different roles and what characters I think are the strongest for their given roles. So first things first, we're going to go over bans, then we're going to go over support, ADC, mid, jungle, and finally solo lane. And then at the end of this too, I'll also like throw up a regular S to D tier list of what I actually think, like what characters I actually think are in what tiers. But these different categories are just going to be the different characters that I think are the strongest. I play at a Grandmaster Master level, if you guys don't know me. And so this is kind of what I see in those high level matches. And these are the characters that I think stand out to me the most per each role. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Let's start with the bans. So any one of these 6 bans I think are really, really good. Cab, because Cab is like one of the tankiest, and if not the tankiest guardian in the game right now. Cab, ever since he got his 2 change, I believe it was last patch 11.7, where he was able to get 10 more prots on his 2 once they're fully stacked, so he gets 40 prots now instead of 30. This character's just been a menace. He can walk around, tank everything. It's so hard to kill him, especially in the early game. Late game, when everybody gets their pen online, it's going to be a little bit easier, of course, or a lot easier. But especially in the early game, he is just so hard to lock down, and because of how much CC he has, right? 2 stuns, his 3 with which is a tremble, and then of course like his wall being able to block people in. This character is really hard to take down and has a massive influence in the fight. And that also mixed with like higher TTK times, or faster TTK times, time to kill times. Cab's gonna be really, really good. Next up we have Thor. Thor's just been around forever. They've done some number nerfs here and there, but I think Thor is just always going to be good as long as he has this kit. I've gone over him in previous tier lists, so I don't want to get too repetitive with them. But unless they like kind of do a kit rework, I think Thor is always going to be a super solid ban. This character just has so much global presence around the map. Kimazos is another one of those characters, mostly kit related. He has 2 forms of immunity, right? He has 2 iframes. He has his jump, which just goes pretty far now, and he also has his ult, which just allows him to kind of blink in, kill a carry, and then like sort of ult away if he wants to, or even like blink out after his ult. It makes it really hard to lock him down, and it makes it a lot harder to sort of like punish him, especially when he's doing things that other jugglers just won't be able to do. Daji is another one of those characters, by the way, that also kind of does that a little bit because of her own self-banishment, but we'll go over her later. So up next we have King Arthur. Now King Arthur did receive some nerfs this patch. He got an HP 5 nerf, and he also got some cooldown nerfs, I believe, onto his 1. I'll have everything from the patch relevant to this video as I'm talking about up in the top right as well, so you guys can see visually. But yeah, he is still a powerhouse in my opinion. So the cooldown nerfs I think affect his laning phase the most, and I'm not a soul laner, right? I'm a support main, so it kind of makes it hard for me to understand how much that impacts his laning. But in terms of his late game team fights and his mid game team fights, it's not really going to affect them too much in my opinion, especially because you're going to be going cooldown for late game anyways. And so he's still going to be a powerhouse. Ever since King Arthur came back in the meta, ever since Shield of Phoenix was introduced or reintroduced into Smite, it used to be old Glad Shield. So giving him percent HP and whatnot back on his abilities, that's what made King Arthur so good in the first place back in like season 7, season 8, all that kind of jazz. Yeah, I still think this character is just honestly really insane. And the main ways to really lock him down if you're playing support are just backline peel. So the thing about King Arthur is like he's going to be great, but if you have backline peel, such as like Ardio or Ares or like Ganesh and those kinds of characters, it makes it a lot harder for Arthur to play the game, and he actually can't play the game at all. But if you don't have any peel, Tyr is a similar case as well. Then he can just run the game, and I still think he's able to do that despite his nerfs. So I still think he's like a top ban. Nua. So Nua's a funny one because Nua, everybody's been playing this character recently, and she is just like, she just gets on my nerves, man. Like Nua is just such an AIDS character to go up against. I care. No, please don't kill me, Nua. Being able to, like, her ult does so much damage, especially too. Now I haven't actually seen this yet, but with the Archmage's gem damage increase that they just did with the buff, like 85 I believe to 120, it could make her a lot better, and she was already good pre-patch. Now I don't know if that's actually the build to go on her, but if it is, then that's like an indirect buff to Nua right there. But in any case, that aside, Nua has just been a thorn in my side. She is really hard to play against, and she's honestly hard to dive as well, and she just does so much damage, especially your carries, that I just think she's honestly a ban prio for me right now. And of course, she's a mid pick. By the way, of course, if these characters aren't in, bans or anything like that, then like if your first pick, try to like pick them up. Everybody except for Ares, and we'll go over Ares right now. But Ares is more of like a counter pick character. So this is how I've always described him. Like he's not going to be like, I don't think, a super top ban, and he's definitely not a top pick. I think he's more of a counter pick. If you are playing like characters that are really bad into Ares, and like it's like, say from the get-go, you want to play, I don't know, say like Fenrir, for example, right? You know Ares is a pretty good counter to you because Fenrir has 2 escapes. Ares combats those escapes, and it makes Fenrir's game almost unplayable. So you probably want to ban Ares in those top 5 bans. But he's not going to be as prio of a ban, I think, as like these other characters. So just kind of keep that in mind. He's more of like a counter ban. Like if you plan to go a character that's really good into him or really bad into Ares, then you probably want to ban Ares to make sure that you're going to be safe when you pick that character. Okay, so next up we have supports. So surprise, surprise, Sobek is still here. Sobek has been here for like literally the last 2 seasons that I've made tier lists, and he's going to keep being up here. He is just so good. His kit's amazing, especially when it comes to ranked and even low elo rank. So if you're like a low elo support trying to climb, and this is what I suggest to everybody that's like trying to climb on support, if you really want a support character that does it, Sobek's gonna be your man. The reason why is because Sobek, well, he's got peel, a little bit of peel. He's not really a super peel oriented character, but he can peel, especially with his pluck, and he's got very, very, very fantastic engage with a lot of damage. He's got 4 damaging abilities. Every single one of his abilities does damage, and similar to Cab, he also has a lot of tankiness because he has passive prots in his kit as well, on top of a heal. So Sobek, and he has built-in anti-heal, which is awesome, but Sobek overall is going to be like, I think you're just top carry support character, especially if you're trying to climb out of low elo. Everyone boost speeds this to some extent. I was playing against Haddix a week or so ago, and he kept beadsing my Sobek pluck midair, and he's a very good player. But if you take like low elo players, they're going to beads almost all the time in midair. Even if they don't, you're still getting their beads. So Sobek, he just has a fantastic kit. He's able to kill. He's able to tank. I thought that when they lowered the TTK time with the 11.6 update, Sobek actually wouldn't be that good. But honestly, he was way, way, way better than I thought. So Sobek's going to be definitely a top support pick if you're trying to climb. This character has made it through like every patch being a top pick, in my opinion, in the last like 2 seasons. So if you want to climb, play Sobek. Next up, we have Ymir. Now, Ymir, in my opinion, Ymir's been good for a while now. But last bonus update, they actually gave Ymir's passive his 5% back. So Ymir's passive is, or was, 10% damage reduction. And in season 9, I believe, they had buffed that to 15% damage reduction. So what that means is that when Ymir hits somebody with an ability, an enemy, they automatically do 15% less damage. Now, I believe late season 9, early season 10-ish, around that area, they nerfed it back down to 10%, like his passive back down to 10%. And just recently, last patch, or last bonus update, they had buffed it back up to 5%. So now, just by hitting somebody as Ymir, you're making that person do 15% less damage, or only 85% of their total damage that they can do. That's insane. That's absurd. That's like your ally having Spirit Robe, for example, because you get 15% damage mitigation. It's like your ally having Spirit Robe versus that enemy player for the full 6 seconds, and Ymir can easily reapply this with all his abilities almost on cooldown. So I think Ymir is a top support pick. I've won a lot of games with him, especially in a row. And if you have really, really good walls, like you're just doing so much. You have the lockdown with your stun, you have the slows, you have the damage reduction. You're going to be very tanky because Ymir has like the highest base stats in terms of HP and prots out of like any character in the game, especially any Guardian. So he's going to be like very tanky from the get-go, and he does a lot of damage as well. So overall, yeah, Ymir's going to be up there when it comes to support picks. Now, similar to Ymir in terms of the walls, we also have Yemoja. Now, Yemoja's a support that I think has not been that good over the past season or so. She's been all right. Like, Yemoja has always been good, and she was like the best support in the game for like 3 seasons straight. But she hasn't really been that good, in my opinion, over the last season. And I think it's because of all the nerfs they gave her, as well as the indirect nerfs, such as like adding erosion into the game, you know, anti-shield items, that kind of stuff, to like really screw over her sustain. But recently, her healing has been really, really good. And they also buffed her, I believe it was 11.7, 11.7 patch. Maybe it was the bonus update around that time. But they had buffed her to have a lower cooldown. They added slow back on a Riptide, all that kind of jazz. So they pretty much made her better. And also healing too, ever since they lowered TTK, has just been a lot better overall. So I think that Yemoja is definitely up there if you can play her. Again, Yemoja is one of those characters, I've said this before, but she's one of those characters where if you can't play her, the enemy team loves it that you're on the enemy team. Let me say that. If you can play her, the enemy team is going to hate it that you're on the enemy team. She's like one of those, like, I can play her, I'm going to frag, or I can't play her, I'm going to be the reason why we lose. So keep that in mind when you're picking Yemoja. Sylvanas is similar to Yemoja when it comes to the healing and also prots. Sylvanas, honestly, bro, Sylvanas is an all-around very, very good pick. He's giving protections and he's giving healing. And he also shreds a lot of prots with his one. He uses really good items right now, like Binding. He uses Lotus Sickle really well, Pridwin as well. All these items he uses like really, really well. I think Sylvanas is a solid pick. He's been a solid pick all season, in my opinion. But as of really the last like 2 patches, I'd say, he has been really, really good. Very, very good. Highly recommend you give him a try. You don't even have to hit every pull. Obviously, if you hit every pull, you're probably going to win the game. Even if you're missing a few pulls here and there, that's completely fine. His kit is just insane right now. Lockdown, Prot Shred, so debuff, buff to your allies and healing, and a CC immune ult. The only thing that this character doesn't really have is a way of escaping. If, you know, the going gets rough and you guys are losing the game, you're probably going to be dying a lot more than if you were, say, on like Maui or some other character with an escape. So just kind of keep that in mind. But I do think Sylvanas is a super good pick right now. Maui just recently got some really nice buffs. He got attack speed buffs, increased auto attack damage. They added increased movement speed back to his 2. He always had movement speed on his 2, but they had nerfed it some time ago, and they just recently added back up in this 11.8 patch. And they also lowered the cooldown on his 3 a little bit. He feels honestly really sick. They also even made his 1 even easier to hit now, so they've been like kind of fine-tuning his 1, his pull. I forget what it's called, like Fisherman's Hook or something like that, but they've been fine-tuning it over the last like few updates, and they did it again, making it even easier to hit. And so you'll find yourself hitting Maui pull like a lot more often than you were, let's say, like a few patches ago, for example, I think. So they've really helped, I think, newer players sort of ease into the character with that. And yeah, he's like doing more damage now, which is great, because one of the knockoffs on Maui was that he has a lot of CC, but like his damage is kind of on the weaker end. But he's doing way more damage now, in my opinion, especially because of the auto attacks. And his CC is obviously still there and a little bit more accurate too. So I think Maui is honestly a really solid pick, and he's super fun to play. I mean, Maui, let's be real here. Maui is one of the funnest characters to play in the entire game. I don't care what you say. Like, his kit is just so fun. If you want to play Maui, play Maui. Just don't play into Ares. It's a rough pick in my opinion, or like RDO can be a rough pick. Any character that has like a lot of lockdown, a lot of cribbles like that. But for the most part, Maui's a phenomenal pick right now. He's very versatile. He can fit in a lot of situations. He can engage. He can backline peel a little bit, especially now that his 2 has the same amount of prots that Ares 2 gives now. 40 prots, and it gives 16% MS. Like, this character has a lot in this kit, a lot to offer. Try him out. He's great. All right, dude. I wanted to get into this one. Kumba Karna. Never have I ever thought I put Kumba Karna on the tier list. They created a glow up for this character for this patch 11.8. Kumba got some insane buffs. Again, we'll have him top right just for you. And Kumba feels amazing. So pretty much what they did is that, and I'll explain this because it might sound like a nerf, but pretty much what they did is they reduced they reduced the duration on Kumba's mez. So they went from 3 seconds to 2.5 seconds. But the mez does damage now. He's rooted the whole time. The mez killed him. I killed him with the mez. That's freaking awesome. The mez does damage. You can get some kills with it. It creates more pressure in the early game for you because it's doing damage. It might not seem like a lot, but it's actually a lot. I had a game today where all I had was Spear of Deso and Kumba. Everything else was tank items, and I had top damage the entire game. And it felt amazing. I was killing people. I had like 4 or 5 kills, and he just felt amazing. So they did reduce the mez like time by about 0.5 seconds, but they added damage to it, which is fantastic. When I was talking about buffing Kumba, I never thought about adding damage to the mez, but it feels very, very good. The other thing they did is that they changed the root. So the root was 2 seconds before, and they nerfed the duration down to 1.5. Now, that might sound like a nerf, but it's not. And the reason being is because they took away DR from the root. And for those of you that don't know what DR is, DR stands for diminishing returns. And whenever you CC an enemy in the game, they get a stack of DR. And each stack provides, I believe it's about 20%. I could be wrong on that value, but it's about 20% or so CC reduction on the next CC ability that hits them. And it lasts for about 15 seconds or so. Now, these stacks can stack up to about 3 or 4. So you can get about 60 to 80% reduction on the next CC, and it can't go below 0.4 seconds. So what that means is that because Kumba had so much CC, pretty much to sum all this up, and he was CCing off cooldown, people, like, he would root somebody or mess somebody, and they were getting rooted for like 0.4 seconds. They weren't even taking the full 2-second root duration a lot of the times because he has so much CC. He was DRing himself pretty much because he kept giving them stacks of CCR every time he CC'd them. You were rarely ever getting that full 2-second root duration off. You were getting maybe around like maybe 1 second or oftentimes a lot less than 1 second unless you opened up a fight with a root. So now his root is 1.5 seconds all the time. So even if you mez them, alt them, if they get E-set, spirit balled, silenced, like, it doesn't matter if they get stunned by Ymir. If you root them, they will be sitting there for 1.5 seconds unless they beads it. So this character feels like honestly fantastic. I've been calling for his root to get DR immunity for a while now. I think that was one of the things that could really save his kit or just give him a kit rework. So I'm super, super glad that they added that. They also added a bonus to his passive, giving him like 20 HP 5 whenever his passive is down. That's kind of nice. I think that's more of like an early game thing. Doesn't really affect the late game as much in my opinion, but it's still nice to have for sure. And they also allowed his autos to cleave. And so he's able to cleave and clear wave a little bit easier. So Kumba honestly feels amazing. He feels like a powerhouse. I should have actually put this character up on the bans list. That's my mistake. I think this character is a top ban. He was getting banned out almost every single game that I was playing today. And I was able to get him in a game or two, and like he felt amazing in those games. So Kumba's like a top pick, top ban right now for me in support. I highly suggest you play him whenever he's up or try to ban him if you're against him, or sorry, if you're not playing support, because this character is really, really good. And then last but not least for supports, we have Khepri. Everybody knows that I'm a Khepri main. I love Khepri. I'm always going to put Khepri on these lists. Khepri actually does, like, bias aside, Khepri does feel really good right now. Not just when I play him, but when I play against him, I find it actually really hard to play against the Khepri, especially one that's like fairly decent at ulting. So I think Khepri is like a really solid pick on this list. He also grants his allies damage mitigation when he 2s them, so they're taking a lot of reduced damage, about 30%. And so overall, like, Khepri is really good at denying the dive and pretty much being able to enable his backline to play the game and hyper carry the game once you get late game. So Khepri is going to be a really solid support. Not much more to that. He didn't get any buffs or any nerfs or anything like that, but I do think he is a really, really good support right now. All right, next up we have ADC. So first one is Jingwei. Now Jingwei, in my opinion, was actually good prior to the 11.8 patch just now that we had, but she got some buffs. So she got more passive attack speed. She got some damage buffs on her ult. Her 2 got like a reduction in cooldown. And she also, I believe, got more air power as well when she like won 3s and all that kind of stuff. So Jingwei actually feels really good. So Jingwei has always been known to be a hyper carry hunter. She doesn't really have the best early game. Her early game is fairly weak. It can still be decent depending on like who you're up against and who your support is and all that kind of jazz. But for the most part, she's known to be a hyper carry support. So when you hit late game or like mid to late game, especially if you're fed, you're popping off. You're popping off. I had a fantastic Jingwei game today, and it felt amazing. Chat was saying that like she looked OP. The other thing too is that they just buffed Boomerang as well. Boomerang's stats are all the same, but they increase the duration after you pick up the Boomerang from 6 to 10 seconds. So you get the increased critical strike chance and movement speed for 10 seconds instead of 6. So they almost doubled the duration. And Jingwei obviously loves the build crit. And so I feel like you could definitely craft some good builds. I'll throw mine up for you guys as well. That I was critting for about 1k late game, but that was with the EFG and a 3k pot, mind you. But I did have haste, so you could replace haste with like a different item that actually does more damage. But in any case, yeah, she's like really, really good right now, in my opinion. So I would try her out. Again, though, she does have like a weaker early game, so don't expect to get results from the early game. If you're playing Jingwei, try to farm. Don't like try to fight 24/7 unless it's a really, really good fight you think. But like you need to be farming and you need to get your items online. That's like the thing on Jingwei. So if like you don't want to do that, or you can't do that, or you don't have the discipline to do that, you know, whatever it is, probably try to stray away from Jingwei. And similar to that too, Hu Yi also got some buffs. So Hu Yi I thought was also really good before the patch, better than Jingwei. Hu Yi does have a bit more early game play, and his fight's really good, but his clear is a little bit weaker. So Hu Yi did get a buff to his 1, his 3, and he also got some passive attack speed as well. His 3 got like a mana cost reduction, I believe, as well. But overall, like Hu Yi actually does play fairly well right now. Like I said, he was good prior to the patch, so like just buffing him makes him even better. But again, his clear is going to be a little bit on the weaker end, I think, in the early game. I think this is supposed to help his clear a little bit by reducing the cooldown of his 1 as he levels it. So I think it will help the clear. But in any case, though, yeah, this character is pretty strong right now. All right, so next up we have Ullr. Now, Ullr actually felt pretty bad last patch, and I think Hi-Rez was a little surprised by that too, because I thought Ullr was going to perform better in TTK meta, or in lower TTK meta. But Ullr got a little bit of damage buffs in terms of base damage and scaling, as well as some like mana decreased buffs as well. The thing about Ullr is that he was like really bad the last few patches, and I think the reason why is because they indirectly nerfed him by nerfing a lot of his items. Like Hydra's had gotten nerfs. I believe like Jotun's got a nerf too, if I'm not mistaken. But a lot of the items that Uller was using and abusing kind of needs. Oh, Transcendence got a massive nerf too. But all those items that Uller was abusing all got nerfs. So like that's gonna really affect Uller because like those are his prime items that he builds, you know? And so that's why I think he felt really, really bad in previous patches. But they did buff his damage this patch. I played a game of him and it was a mid game. So like you can honestly flex him in mid if you want to. But he did feel really, really strong. Or I don't want to say really, really strong, but like he did feel pretty strong to a certain extent. He definitely felt a lot better than he did last patch. And I played him a few games last patch, and every single time, like, man, this character does no damage. Once you got 6 items, it's like, okay, like you're 6 items, but nobody wants to just play for a 6-item hunter. Like, what's the point, right? If you're just playing for 6 items, you can play any character, like any hunter in a game, and do damage. So he didn't feel that good prior to 6 items, but now he actually feels pretty decent prior to 6 items, maybe around like 4 or so. Up next, we have Onher. Onher's been in our tier list literally the entire season. No introduction is needed. This character just has so much CC. He's really aggravating the fight against. His passive is literally a free 20 pen for him and any of his allies. I believe it's only physical pen, but any of his like physical allies. So this character is just nuts because he has all his own setup. He doesn't even need like a support or whatever to CC for him. And he just does a ton of damage as well. So Onher is just going to kind of remain here, I think, unless he gets somewhat of like a kit change or massive number of nerfs. I don't really think he's going to go away from this ADC role anytime soon. And if you guys are, curious why Onher got really good, it was because a while ago, probably I believe like towards the beginning of the season, he had gotten a buff that increases base attack speed. So before that, his attack speed was a lot lower. And obviously Onher doesn't have like a stim to his kit. He doesn't have an attack speed buff stim. So like it didn't feel the best, especially late game. But ever since he got that, and with some other items I think in the game now being pretty good, that gives you more attack speed, he just feels really, really good overall. Up next we have Artemis. Now Artemis, I've been saying I think has been pretty good for a while now. She is a hyper carry hunter similar to Jingwei late game, but she has a bit more of a better early game, and she does like itemize I think into like Bluestone because of her poke and all that kind of stuff, but she still like goes crit and all that kind of stuff. She's still an auto attack based ADC. Artemis just got some buffs recently that make her a bit tankier and also like reduce the CD of some of her abilities, mainly I think her poke ability, and also a nice little quality of life buff where if an enemy falls into the trap, not only can Artemis see them, but like her entire team can see them, kind of like a Kamazatsu one or something like that, whenever he hits somebody with his echolocation. So Artemis, very good. She has, like I said, a bit of a better early game. She's like pretty good from level 5 up. And her late game, she's a hyper carry hunter. I mean, she's fantastic. She does some of the most damage in the game. Her stun is literally automatic and can even chain stun people too, of course, right? Like go down the fight. And she's very, very troublesome. The only thing about Artemis that, you got to look out for is that, especially if the enemy wants to camp you, you can die a lot. And I think that's partly why they gave her increased base stats to really help her out, especially in the laning phase, because if you get, gone on it, you don't have a direct escape. Yeah, you have a little bit of self-peel, but in the early game, especially if like rotators, like because tanks are so good right now, so like this enemy support's doing a lot to you, and of course the jungler is probably gonna maybe have a level or two on you depending on how they're jungling, but they're gonna be doing a lot, so you're probably gonna die, right? And that just really makes it tough for Artemis to get the late game. But like I said, once you get to like that mid to late game, you're really good. And with these buffs, it actually makes her laning, I think, a lot better. So I think Artemis is really good right now. Definitely give her a try. I think she's going to be at the top of the EDC role. She gets camped, like I said, but like if you can play around that position a little bit better, maybe get some wards up. I'm looking at you. Get some wards up. All right. You'll be fine. You'll be fine. Next up, we have Heim. Heim, I think, has just been good pretty much all season. He just does a lot of damage. He's pretty tanky. He's pretty safe. Basic hunter, not... Oh, I don't want to say he's a basic hunter. His kit's a little bit on the more complex side, but he's been out for so long in the game that like pretty much everybody knows how his kit works, if that makes sense. He didn't get any buffs or anything like that. He's just a good hunter. Like, there's not much more to it. I think he just hits very hard. He abuses Kin's pen build really well. I even think, too, this might be a hot take, but I think you can use a crit build on him and be completely fine. Now, a crit build is not... Don't get me wrong, all right? I don't want people in the comments saying, like, what? He said use a crit build on Heim? Crit build is never going to be better on Heim than a pen build. Pen build, you're just going to get way more value out of it because crit Heim, your autos are still hitting harder because they're critting, but like you get less effectiveness or less efficiency from the crit items. That's why everybody says like crit's bad on Heim. I still think you can use crit on Heim. I think it's fine. like your autos will be hitting for like 1K or whatever late game, right? Like or over that. But pen build's always going to be better in my opinion. But if you want to have some fun and all that kind of stuff and experiment, crit builds are fine, especially with boomerang. I think you're solid to do that. But yeah, overall, Heim, nothing really happened with him. He just a good hunter, pretty much. And speaking of a good hunter, Danza. I actually don't see Danza played as much as honestly I should. This character does a lot. He does a lot of damage. His cooldowns are insane. And he's honestly a pretty good flex. I've seen Danza run a lot of games and be flexed to different roles, whether that's ADC or solo or even jungle. And these are, good players, of course, doing it. So they might have like a higher skill ceiling than most, of course. But regardless, I think Danza honestly has a lot of potential. I've even seen him play in mid. I've seen him play in every role, even support, to be honest with you. I don't recommend it. But for the most part, yeah, I think Danza's a really, really good pick. He does a lot of damage. His cooldowns seem like they come up very fast. He has some good flexes to different lanes. And honestly, now I'm not giving you guys the go ahead to do this or anything like that. But I will say, I hate it when people don't play tanks in soul lane, but I don't mind a Danza. All right, I don't mind a Danza as long as the Danza is a good Danza. All right, I don't mind a Danza. So overall, I think the character's pretty good, and yeah, I mean, he's a good character. He's kind of like Heim. I don't think he like received like anything in particular that makes him good or anything like that, or like overly good. But I think he's just overall just a really solid character, and he should definitely get some more playtime. You guys need to try him out if you're an ADC main. Now up next we have Freya. Now Freya actually got some nerfs this patch, but I still think she's a good ADC. So like the thing about Freya is that she melts late game, especially with Fatalis, like being so obviously she could always go like Ring of Fatalis or whatever it was called. So she always had that, but it had an internal cooldown. And now with like Fatalis being in the game, she can use Fatalis all the time whenever she wants to, and it makes her really, really, really strong. And her ability to melt not just tanks but squishies late game is almost unparalleled to some other hunters. But they did nerf her a little bit. They gave her some number of nerfs and all that kind of jazz. I still think she's a strong ADC, and out of the magical ADCs that you could potentially go, like Sol, Oleron, Kronos, and Freya, I think Freya is going to top the charts on the other three, and she's going to be your best bet if you are looking for a magical ADC. By the way, speaking of magical ADCs, I'm going to go over Jean because I think this character is actually pretty cracked in ADC, but we'll go over him in a little bit. I just wanted to add that one in there. And then last but not least, we have Charybdis. So Charybdis, I think, has been good ever since her buff that she got, I believe it was 11.7 patch, but she got a buff, made her, she got a few different tweaks, but the main big thing is that her 3 is now CC immune going into the 3, and it makes her absurdly safe, like way, way safer than she was before. Her 3 can no longer get canceled by CC. You can still kill her like before she goes underground, but it can no longer get canceled, and that's a big thing. So Charybdis, I think, is very good. She uses a pen build similar to Heim, I think, a lot better, like Kins, Exi, and all that kind of stuff. Oboe procs, right? She loves proc builds, but she's still also really good with the crit build, in my opinion, at least. So you can use whatever build you want on her. But yeah, I think this character is super safe, kind of the opposite of Artemis, and she does a lot of damage, especially the tanks late game. Like, you are melting tanks. The only thing to look out for, and I'm not honestly 100% sure why this is the case, but the only thing to look out for is your objective burn late game doesn't really feel the best, especially on Fire Giant, unless you're going crit. If you're going crit, you're fine. But if you're doing a pen build on her, she doesn't really feel like she has the best objective burn relative to like other ADCs. And honestly, I don't really know why. Maybe if you guys do, you could put it in the comments, because she has a stim, right? And she procs the Xe really well. She also has a 2 that shreds 40% prots to the FG as well, of course. So like, she has the damage for it, but it doesn't really feel like she's doing the damage. So I don't know what that's all about. But overall, Charybdis, super, super, super good character, in my opinion. And definitely like recommend playing her some more and trying her out. Also, too, don't shoot the ult. Oh, okay. You can shoot the... I mean, I shoot the ult. I don't want to be a hypocrite here. You can shoot the ult. But, like, just remember, if you miss, just say, damn, this ult sucks. Why did I do that? That's all I'm going to say. All right, let's go over to mids. So for mid, we have all these characters. First up is Ra. Ra, I think, has... I'm going to use the term again, but this fits Ra. Has gotten a glow up recently. He didn't get any specific buffs to this patch. However, I think over the last 2 patches, he has gotten very, very good. Ra has been that one consistent character that, as long as, of course, you're hitting the beams, right? You don't have to hit every beam, but as long as you're hitting the beams, whether they're the ones or the snipes, the ults, he just does so much damage. He's still doing decent damage to tanks, but like, he's just getting so much damage off in the backline. And every time I'm against the Ra, or even if I play Ra myself or have Ra on my team, he's making some really massive impact in the fight that other mages, I feel like, don't make nearly as much right now. And overall, like playing against the Raw has been really, really aggravating. I feel like he's a really solid character right now to just kind of play and try to get good with. And he's also fun too. I always find characters that are a little bit, if they have abilities that are hard to hit, I find them more fun because they're more like, hopefully, if their design is correct, they should be more rewarding. Should is the thing there. It feels pretty rewarding if you hit stuff that isn't easy to hit and it does a lot of damage, especially in Raw's case. Raw's 1 is doing like 1,000+ damage late game, and his ult's doing like 1,500+ late game. I mean, he does a lot, and his cooldowns are really, really good. So keep that in mind. Play a little bit of Raw. But if you're missing snipes and stuff like that, just remember your team's probably going to hate you. Disco got some really nice buffs this patch. So her 3 got a greater distance. Her leap got a greater distance, which is awesome. I've been asking for that for a while, or I've been wanting Disco to have that for a while. I think that's what she needed. But also, her 3 now reduces the cooldown of her ult, which is crazy. So not just her 1 and her 2 anymore. Her 3 also reduces the cooldown of her ult by 0.5 seconds per tick, which is honestly really, really good. So she's getting her ult back up faster. Her 3 is going a little bit further. Overall, I think Disco was doing a decent amount of damage last patch. She's still going to be doing really good damage this patch, especially like having that Disco passive. It's super nice for your team when they're laning to help them sort of like get ahead or give them that extra edge of damage to be able to win their lane, all that kind of jazz. Especially if it's you with the Disco passive, like you feel good. But yeah, no, Disco I think definitely deserves a try. Definitely deserves a shot. I think she's pretty good right now. Her buffs just make her good and make her more fun. So try them out. Now, up next we have Hell. Hell got some buffs too. Hell, in my opinion, didn't need buffs. Hell was already good last patch, but the thing about Hell is that her damage now is increased on her 3. I believe they upped the scaling from like 75 to 85, some absurd number like that. And the thing about Hell is that her passive increases her damage by 20%, which is why she's always just been able, in my opinion, to do a lot of damage. Like, she has one of the best mage passives in the game. So, like, all the damage she does is, like, increased by 20% pretty much. Maybe not proc items. I could be wrong on the proc items, but I believe the proc items as well. But her damage is increased by 20%. So if you're increasing the damage of an ability, say, for example, the scaling in this case from 75 to 85%, like, that's getting increased even more because she has damage increase from her passive. So I think she's going to do a lot of damage. And like I said earlier, when we were under the supports category, healing is very good right now. It's really hard, honestly, to win a game that has that when you're playing against 2 healers. Like, it just is. I've played a lot of ranked games this split. I'll tell you right now, my win rate versus like 2+ healers is very low, and my win rate with 2+ healers is very high. So yeah, no, healers are insane right now. Hell is really aggravating, and she can do even more damage than she was doing before. I definitely think she's a solid mid pick, for sure. Morgan Le Fay is another one I think that's been really good and honestly a little bit overlooked. A lot of the top end players know she's a good character. Like, they've been telling me, like, yeah, Morgan Le Fay is really, really, really good. Her damage is strong. I played against it many, many times. I've had it on my team many, many times. Her damage is really good. She's got a lot of CC built into her kit. But I don't know if, like, other players really understand how good she is. And same kind of similar with Raijin as well. So I do think that Morgan Le Fay, I'm kind of like putting her here because I think she needs more playtime. Like, at least from what I've seen. I don't see her as much, but I think like she could use a bit more playtime, and you should definitely try her out. She's fun. She's good. She's a really good character and does a lot of damage. And like I said, Raijin's kind of similar on that. And Raijin does when I talk about damage, Raijin is so aggravating. What is it? His 2, I believe. Like, the thing that his Raijin or whatever can like literally do like a third, and this is the early game, can do a third or more of a carry's HP bar alone, and that's not even counting his combo. I mean, if you 2-1 somebody, you're practically killing a carry. In late game especially too, like once you get all the damage online, Raijin is sick, man. That character is sick. I don't understand why he doesn't get played more. I think he's actually pretty fun as well, but this character is sick for sure. Like, he needs to get played. You should definitely play Raijin in mid. I want to see more Raijins in my queues. On my team. Up next we have Marty. Marty, yeah, I think like Marty didn't get any buffs or anything like that, but I have seen some players just like play Marty, and I think he's much better in mid than ADC, which is why I have him in mid. He does, I mean, just like with all the mids here, he does do a lot of damage, right? Like, that's the trend here. I don't want to keep saying it, but I'm going to keep saying it anyways. He just does a lot of damage. I think Marty is relatively safe because he has a banish ult, and obviously he has his 3 as grass. I don't really see Marty too much anymore. I don't know if people got bored of him or if people think he's bad, but the Martys that I've seen in my games actually have been doing quite a bit, especially the ones on my team, thankfully. So yeah, give Marty another shot if you forgot about this character. I think he's a really solid mid pick. Again, I don't like him in ADC because he's a bluestone oriented hunter. He's more ability based. Of course, he does do damage with auto attacks, but he's more ability based, and so he's not going to melt tanks as much late game as like your On Her, your Artemises, your Heims, that kind of stuff, right? That are doing like more like Kittens oriented items, all that kind of jazz. Next we have Anubis. I've seen some Anubis today. Now the Anubises didn't look good, but I think that was more of the pilot controller. You know what I mean? Like not the Anubis itself, but more of the pilot controller. I think Anubis's buffs are actually pretty wild. He got some really nice damage increase buffs, and just like Artemis as well, he also got more tankiness buffs, and I think that's the again help his laning phase or help when he gets jumped on. But no, this character I thought was I wouldn't say I thought he was good last patch. I don't know if he was like that good, but like he was like okay, and this I think just kind of put him over the line to being a good character, if that makes sense. So I do think he's really solid. Also, too, his 2 got an increase in stun duration from level 1. So before it was 1.6 seconds scaling to 2, and now they're making it 2 seconds at all ranks, which is absurd. Absolutely absurd. That's as long as Zhong's stun with the card on. So yeah, I mean, I think he's really good. Try him out, and maybe he's not for you. Like you might just die a lot with him, like on Artemis. But at the same time, too, I do think that the buffs make him do like way more damage, make him a bit more safer because he's more tanky, and of course his stun is now 2 seconds at all ranks, so he's got a bit more peel for himself as well. And of course, last but not least, we have Zhong. Zhong got a nerf this patch, actually similar to Freya in the sense that they got nerfs, but he has less prots now than he did. So I believe before he got about 45 or 48 prots maxed out on his passive, and now it's like 35 or something like that. So it's like about a 10 decrease or so. Honestly, it's pretty big, especially for someone like Zhong who's like relying off that for his major prots for his passive, especially if you want to blink in there. By the way, if you're playing Zhong, please buy blink. You want to blink in there and nuke the backline. You want to play just like Chang'e. All right, just like Chang'e, you always buy blink. In my opinion, always get blink on Zhong. I don't care if you go Aegis or beat second. I don't care. I don't care if you go sprint second. Go blink, please. Blink is a must-have in my opinion. But in any case, back to why I think he's good. His 1-3, besides being a massive stun, absolutely obliterates targets. He just does so much damage, and he can practically one-shot a squishy late game with his 1-3 alone. His 3 is always getting off, right? Like you can't cancel the 3, which is weird. Even if Zhong gets stunned while 3ing, it still goes through every single time. So Zhong just has so much damage. He's very tanky, and I think it's just really hard to kind of deal with him, especially because a lot of support players right now are going more frontline-ish supports. They're not really going backline-y supports. And so like with more frontline-y supports, you can actually blink into the backline and kind of murder their carries. Because they don't have a support to help them out because they're too busy diving you, right? But you're diving them, so who's really winning. In any case, though, yeah, no, this character does a lot, and he can also be flexed to ADC. I played against Zhong ADC a few times. You build Hasten Fatalis. This is important. Zhong ADC with Hasten Fatalis. I don't know the rest of the build, but you go like, I'll throw up a build for you guys. But you do that with some of the rings, dude. You are zooming, right? You got Fatalis, so you're not getting slowed while you auto attack, and you're just killing everybody, including tanks, like with demonic rip and all that kind of stuff, especially because your little like flying freaking piece of paper that sits next to you that also does like 50% of your auto attack damage is also procking item effects. So you're getting like multiple item effect procs per auto attack. you see where I'm going with this? And that was like a thing that they did like two or three patches ago, something like that. So Zhong mid is good, but I also think Zhong ADC is also really good. This character is a pretty good flex right now. I think he's very strong. I highly recommend you try him out and play him. And he's also pretty fun to just kind of get in there and nuke the enemy team as well. Up next, we have junglers. Oh, wait. Also, too, let me go ahead and like just put these characters in their respective categories as well. And we'll just kind of put these guys over here. We won't explain these since we already explained them, but there we go. And we'll put Cab right there. So up next, we have junglers. So we have Pele. So Pele actually got some really nice buffs. I thought Pele was decent. So the thing about Pele is that she has, in my opinion, always been known to be more of like a mage assassin. And what do I mean by that? Like a mage assassin dash, she's a physical character, yes. But the way I look at mages are, they do a lot of AoE damage. That's what mages are really good at doing. And that's what Pele is great at doing. She goes in there and she nukes the enemy with a whole bunch of AoE, whether it's her ult, her 2, her 3. Her 1's not really AoE, but it hits multiple targets. So you see where I'm going with this. So she just got some buffs to her damage. She already did a ton of damage before. With the buffs to her damage, she's doing way, way more now. I had a Pele on my team earlier today, and she was absolutely popping off. And she was really helping to carry the game from an early game perspective. She also grants a lot of early game pressure because of how much damage she can do. Like, she just does a lot of damage. She's a damage machine. That's what she is. By the way, if you want to help counter Pele and you're a support player, Capri is the way to go. Very, very good into her. And some of these other characters too, I think, as well, are super good into her. Like Sobek, like Sylvanas, all that kind of, even like Yamoja, all that kind of jazz in Ymir too. But in any case, though, yeah, Pele, I think, is really good at just nuking the enemy right now, and she's like that's what she's always done, but she's even better now because she got buffed. So I think that puts her onto the jungle list. Next up, we have Bakasura. Bakasura got some really big buffs. Now, the one I really, really, really want to look at to these two buffs are actually the alt buffs. So, like, this is pretty cool on the Butcher Blades. Yeah, you got some increased power, but the alt buffs giving him now the alt, if you're standing in the alt, doesn't just slow and cripple you anymore. You're also taking some damage. But the big thing is the cone damage increase. Guys, this was a 6-second thing where he got cone auto attacks, and now at level 20, he gets it for 10 seconds, almost double what he had before. Think about a Bakasura running around with cone auto attacks for 10 seconds. Like, what? So that's pretty crazy. That's why I put him on this list. I think that his ults, I still need to see a little bit more play with them, but in theory, I think that his ult's actually making him a very strong character right now. Especially because, again, he can just literally have cone auto attacks for 10 seconds, which is absurd. And his alt buffs, I think, were just really, really good in general. Tsukiyomi, I put him on my tier list before. I said he was sort of a hidden gem. I think this character's nuts. He didn't get any special buffs or anything like that. I just think this character has been really, really good all season. Or not really all season, sorry. The last like few patches ever since they lowered TTK time. So ever since 11.6. Now we're in 11.8, but ever since then. So the last few patches have been really, really good. He just does a lot of damage. Kind of similar to Pele. He's really good at just like nuking the enemies. And if you have a good Tsukiyomi on your team, I mean, I've seen Tsukiyomi carry the game more times than I can count. Absolutely insane. This character does so much damage. I think he's a bit of a hidden gem. He does kind of suffer a little bit like Artemis or some of these other characters that don't have escapes, like Morgan Le Fay too, and all that kind of stuff, in the sense that like he can't, if he gets gone on, it's a bit harder for him to get people off of him, right? Because you don't really have an escape. Like, you can try to ult away, like use the CC immunity and kind of like walk back and like miss your ult on purpose, that kind of jazz. But oftentimes than not, you probably like want to go in there and just kind of like sacrifice yourself, but do a lot of damage. But he's very good at doing a lot of damage and locking people down with slows. Definitely play him out more if you are a jungler. I think this character is really nuts. Speaking of a nuts character, Daji, another hidden character that kind of goes under the radar. I think she gets played a little bit more at higher levels than lower levels for some reason. Daji, in my opinion, makes jungling look a lot easier. Just because she has a banish. She can like literally go in there. She can practically one-shot a carry late game. But even if you can't get the one-shot off, you literally just alt banish yourself just like you would as a Camazotz. Have a lot of CC out, of course, in your ult because it's like an Ares ult. And overall, you're just buying a lot of time for your teammates, right? If you're able to banish yourself, you're buying time for your team. So, yeah, no, Daji's insane. Tsuki's insane. Both these characters, I think, are a little bit underrated in terms of, like, playtime, in terms of, like, what I see, at least. So I highly recommend playing these two. Fenrir is just going to be your basic, like, if, you know, they have characters like Thoth, Hera, that kind of jazz. Characters that don't really have escapes. Fenrir's always going to be good, and he can kind of like super run a game, kind of like Ares is to characters that, you know, don't have CC immune ults or rely off dashes, like Fenrir, for example, but rely off dashes. Like Ares can run the game, right? Fenrir is kind of the same thing for characters that just don't have jumps and all that kind of jazz, especially ones without CC immune ults too. He's really good at, in particular, killing the mages. So Fenrir doesn't like really have anything special going on. He's just Fenrir. I think he's solid in a lot of cases, and I've seen him run a lot of games. Erlong. So Erlong's like a weird one because so my last tier list video, I put Erlong under like S tier, and I still think he's kind of up there. Maybe not S tier, I'd say maybe A tier now. He's underperformed way more than I thought he would have. He doesn't get picked nearly as much, but even when he does get picked, people don't really do the best with Erlong. Now, it depends like who's playing him. Like, I was playing against Layers the other day, and Layers was absolutely smoking us on the Erlong. So that was fun. Not really. But like other players, when they play Erlong, they just don't, like, they don't have that same impact. They don't have that same effect. You know what I'm trying to say here? So his kit's really good in my opinion. Like he's got a super good kit ever since they gave him his knockup back. And I still think like I'm gonna put him under here because I still think he's definitely like that. You know, you should definitely play this jungle character, but he's not the kind of character where I'm gonna be like, oh, like you have to play him. He's like so broken, yada yada yada. No, he's not like that at all. You can definitely like not have to ban him, go through with all that kind of stuff. So. Up next, we have Hercules. Now, Hercules is actually a surprising one to put in here because, again, didn't receive any special treatment, but dude, he does so much damage. Like, I know this Hercules, and like Hercules has always done damage, but you play this character in the jungle, like in the jungle in particular. I'm not talking about any other role here. I'm talking about the jungle. He one shots. Like with combo, he just one shots squishies, like from level 5 upwards, and it's just so insane to look at. And then you can also get those big burst heals, especially if they don't build anti-heal. Hercules is a jungle. Like, he's a jungle main right now, in my opinion. I think that's probably his best role. Try him out. Play him. See how you like him. Up next. Oh, wait, no, not up next, because we already did Camazotz and we did Thor. So up next, we're going to do solo. Again, we already did Camazotz and Thor, so we don't have to go over them again. But Soul Lane. Oof. Okay, dude. I've always been putting Vamana on my tier list, even when he got nerfs, because I thought Vamana was insane. But the thing about Vamana is that he also just got some buffs recently. I don't know why they're buffing Vamana, but like Vamana is so aids to play against because you can't like really peel him. It's really hard to. The best thing you can do is try to debuff him in his ult or body block him. But the thing I've always said about Vamana is that when people are like, "Oh, Dash, just wait out the ult," it's like, bro, like if you first of all, the ult is the base of 5 seconds. If you wait out the ult, like he's still killing a carry. Like if he ults correctly and sticks onto the carry, like he's killing that carry within a couple seconds. So like you see here, like sometimes late game, it's just best to try to out DPS him and kill him in his ult. In my opinion, from my experience and from like what I've seen. Because like if you're not hitting him and he's hitting you, he's gonna be killing everybody, and then you just lose the fight anyways. So I don't know. But they just buffed him. I don't know why they buffed him, but they did. So Vamana, he was on the list before. He's definitely on the list now. So he's a very solid character, very, very good for carrying games. Play him if you want to win games and you're a soul laner, pretty much. That's what I would say. Hades got some recent buffs. I think they're very good for him. Hades has always been a lane pressure character, in my opinion, for soul lane. You can also play him in mid, by the way, too, right? Like he can also be a mid laner, but I think his best role, honestly, is soul lane because he's really good at building hybrid. Yeah, Hades always has built a lot of pressure, and now that he got some buffs, I think it puts him sort of back on the map to be in the soul lane. Before, I don't think he was good enough to be in the soul lane, but now it's like, okay, with these buffs, with the extra damage on his 3, and extra scaling on his ult, all that kind of jazz, especially with all the debuffs and whatnot he applies, I think he's actually a really solid character right now, and I do think he's really good in the soul lane. Next we have Odin. So Odin's actually a pretty interesting one because like Odin I didn't really see as like that good of a character for a while, but he's kind of like slithered his way into my games a little bit, and he's actually been very effective. Obviously for the same reasons as why you would maybe say want to pick Ymir for walls, right? They're really good into characters like Ra, Hell, like Morgan Le Fay, like Artemis, like these kinds of characters. Odin's gonna be very good into, but he also is very tanky, of course, especially with the shield spamming, and he does a lot of damage. He does way more damage than you think he would. Now, Odin, I think, gets bullied in lane. It depends on the matchup, of course, but I think he gets bullied in lane to most characters, I want to say. So he's not going to give you like the highest pressure, but he still has decent pressure, I think. I'm not, again, I'm a support player, so I'm not going to talk on like the best for soul lane, but from my experience at least, he doesn't really pull the most pressure, but he can in like certain matchups, I guess. But like, yeah, he just does a lot of damage. He's really good at running people down, doing damage, and the util from his cage and whatnot actually comes in handy quite a bit. I've had some Odins on my team recently and even played against some Odins, and I've been very impressed with how that character has been played in my game. So I'm going to put Odin on this list because, again, from my experience, he's actually popped off and been the difference maker in quite a few of my games. Tyr just got a buff. I don't know why he got a buff, but Tyr got a buff to his ult, pretty much reducing the cooldown even more. I think it was like 90 seconds and now it goes down to 70 or something like that. I'll have it top right, but I think it was like 90 seconds and now like is around 70 or so. This character, he's just very similar to King Arthur in the sense that like if the enemy has like has good peel into Tyr, he's not going to do anything in the game in my opinion. But if they don't have peel, Tyr can literally run the game. Tyr's loaded with CC, of course, knockups, stuns on his ult, and now even with a shorter ult cooldown, I mean, he's if you build cooldown on him, which you probably will, especially with Exploding Pridwin, the red one, he's going to be really, really solid. So he's a really solid pick, but he's more of like pick him sort of mid to lower in the draft, just because if you pick him high in the draft, you're going to get counterpicked. So that's kind of what I would do with him. Cthulhu's another one I think that's sort of been a little bit hidden recently. Cthulhu runs games, guys. This character actually runs games right now. Ever since Shield of Phoenix became a thing, Cthulhu has been way, way, way better. He has so much sustain, especially in his ult. Fun fact, Shield of the Phoenix, I believe, even procs off of the like little claw swipe attack in his ult that he gets up every like couple seconds. So he's like sustaining like a crazy amount. He's very similar to Vamana in the sense that Vamana, you know, can't really be peeled off of, and neither can Cthulhu. Now you can trap Cthulhu in with walls. So if you're against a Cthulhu, Kabrakan, Ymir, all these kinds of characters, I think are going to play fairly well into him. But like for the most part, Cthulhu is gonna be really, really good at being an annoyance, being hard to kill, and honestly just doing a lot of damage and being a big difference maker in soul lane. Right now, I think the way the roles work, my opinion, you can disagree, that's completely fine. I think soul lane is probably the best role in the game. At least it was last patch, and I haven't really seen anything different this patch. So I think soul lane is probably the best role in the game when it comes to carrying games, and then I think jungle would probably be next up from there. So that's kind of what I've seen. And if you're just a super cracked ADC, then like ADC. But yeah, jungle solo, or solo jungle rather, I think are the two like best roles right now for carrying. So up next we have Chalk. Chalk is the Rain Man. All right, Chalk does a lot of damage, a lot of CC, and is very hard to kill. So just like with a lot of these characters, I guess on the solo lane list, he's just a really, really frustrating character to deal with right now. I think Chalk has too many good things to his kit. They've buffed him over the past couple patches. They didn't really do anything to him this patch, but I think he was good last patch, and that sort of goodness carries over to this patch as well. So I think Chalk is just going to be an all-around solid character. Very good into auto-attack characters like ADCs and all that kind of stuff because of the attack speed slow that he has, especially characters that can't really get out of the attack or get out of the slow, get out of his rainstorm. So Chalk's overall just going to be a super solid pick. And so that's going to be it for the picks and bans for each role, guys. I hope you enjoyed this section of it. This is kind of like the meat and potato section. This is the main section. Next, I'm just going to briefly, because I already went over these characters and I don't want to go over all 130 characters in the game, but I'll just kind of briefly go over what I think is like S to, you know, D tier, and sort of like explain a little bit about that. But yeah, this is pretty much going to be like the bulk of the video. I hope you guys enjoyed this section. Let's go ahead and move on over to the next one. All right, guys, welcome to the second portion of the video. Again, we're just going to briefly go over the tier list, but here it is. And I kind of lied to you guys. I said S through D, but it's actually going to be SS through D. And also too, I know some of you might think I'm fried for some of these categories, but at the same time, this is kind of who I think are like in their relative tiers. Now, some of these characters, obviously, I haven't played all of them in the past, like, you know, couple patches, or I haven't seen all of them in the past couple patches, but given like their kits and all that kind of stuff, I have a pretty good idea of where I think I would like to put them. So not too much to talk about, I think, on this, but one of the big ones is that E-Shell, she was like one of the really OP characters I had last patch, like last tier list, but she got a really good nerf to her this patch, which took away the damage mitigation that she got while she was ulting. So she still is able to heal now, but she doesn't have that 15% damage mitigation anymore. So that makes her a lot less tanky while she's ulting and way more killable. So that's going to knock her down a tier. And so some of the characters that I had like up here also got knocked down a little bit, I think, as well. Medusa's another one that was like omega broken in the previous patches, but she got like hard nerfed and she was still really good, and then she got hard nerfed again in this patch. So especially to her Viper shots. Her Viper shots are the biggest nerf in my opinion, and obviously her acid spit having increased cooldown means that her clear is less, so she's gonna be down here. But for the most part, this is where I would place these characters. I know you guys might think I'm fried for putting Raw in S tier, but guys, when you see a Raw do this, oh, huh? Was that guy full HP? Yeah, I think this character deserves spot in S tier. But for the most part, SS the best. Cab, Camazotz, Arthur, Kumbhakarna, right? Like Sobek, Vamana. These characters are gonna be the best by far, in my opinion. I think you should be playing like if you're really looking to win, given like, you know, whether it's jungle, solo lane with these two, or like support, you should probably try to play these characters. And then S tier, very good. I think all these characters deserve to be in S tier. Raijin, a little bit debatable. Could put him in A tier, but I do think Raijin is that good. I really do think Raijin is that good. I just think he's like super, super underplayed. So this is going to be the tier list. Most of the Guardians are going to be like within this double S to A tier range. You might have a few like supports here and there, like Terra and Jing, that are down here. But most of the supports, because support is such a strong role right now, like tanks are a very strong role right now, they're going to be in like the S to double S tier range, most of them. And then of course, like under your D tier, you're going to have, I just think AMC is bad. I think Soul's bad. You can make it work, sure. Bake, so if you guys watched my previous tier list, this character was in don't touch, never play, whatever the case. He's moved up a category since then. Now he's in D tier for bad. This character got some buffs in this patch, but I don't think they're gonna like make him, that good or anything like that. So Charon I think is good. Now this is Charon support. Let me like just say that. I think Charon mid is actually pretty good. Probably like a solid B pick character. But in support and like every other role besides mid, I think Charon's pretty bad. So, but yeah, this is gonna be the list, guys. I hope you all enjoyed this video. And I hope this video helps you out as well when it comes to picks and bans, especially for ranked, or even if you're just trying to have fun, play some casuals, whatever the case, and you want to know what are the best characters in the current meta. So I hope all this helps you out and helps you like decide what you want to pick for your respective role and what's gonna be the best fit for you. But in any case, I'll catch y'all in the next video. See ya.